Hi everyone, welcome to After Class with Ballet for All,
a podcast by two passionate adult ballerinas about all things adult ballet related.
and some random thoughts in between.
We're so glad you're here.
So grab your water bottle
Or a cup of coffee.
and join us for a quick chat after class.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the After Class podcast. Hello, Miss Elena, how are you?
All good, thank you. What about you, Hannah? How are you doing today?
Pretty good. I just got back from an hour and a half class, so I'm a little tired, but it was a really good class, so also feeling good. I feel like I get kind of a high off of a good class, I guess when they talk about like a runner's high, the dance high. So yeah, it was a good class. But I'm excited to do this episode this week. We are going to actually be answering the questions that we got from you guys over on social media about starting point training as an adult. So hopefully this is a fun episode for you guys to hear some of your questions get answered.
Yeah, it will be a really good episode. I think a lot of you are trying to go on point. And sometimes the information that we find in the internet is a little bit misleading, and you might take the wrong decision just because you are not well informed. And this episode should be really good for you guys.
Yeah, let's jump in then. One of the first questions we got, we're going to try to move in an order that makes sense. So starting with how much training should you have before you start going on point? So I'm going to kick this one over to you, Elena, as a teacher, because I think obviously the teacher perspective is really important here.
Yeah, so there is no a specific amount of time. It all depends on how much work you put on, how strong your ankles are, if you have prior training or not. But I will say that at least a minimum of 6 months of systematic training on strengthening your ankles, your glutes, your hips. It is not just about your feet, but it's everything that connects to the turnout, to the releves. You're going to be raising all the way up on your toes. I will say at least 6 months of very systematic and intensive strengthening and stretching exercises for legs, ankles, and so on.
Yeah, and that would be, I don't know if you would agree with this. I'm guessing you would, that's 6 months of not just like once a week. That's 6 months of probably a few days a week.
Exactly. And that's considering that you're also doing your ballet lessons, which is going to be the other foundation that you need for that. It isn't just releves up and down and over one leg, and it isn't just about that. You need to be flexible, strong, but you need to have a good ballet foundation. So once you get on, let's say, a fifth position on point, it's very different to a fifth position on releves on flat, but still it connects to that technique. And it's knowing how to lift, how to rise up. So yeah, definitely connected to your weekly training. And I will say that at least 3 classes a week.
That's what I would have assumed too, is at least 6 months. I think in some cases people might be surprised. They might have thought that it needs to be longer. Like for some people, they might think, oh, wow, that's a long time. And for some people, they might think, oh my gosh, I thought I would need to be dancing for like 10 years to go on point. So I think sometimes the misconception can go both directions. Like you don't have to be training like a prima ballerina for years to start doing point. So I think in some ways it is a little bit more accessible to adults than some people might think, but definitely, like you said, several months of consistent training and strengthening is going to set you up the best for success. Another question we got is about how uncomfortable is it really? Which I think it's hard because that's kind of it probably varies from person to person. Like I've heard people say like, oh, it's just like it hurts so bad. And from what I've heard, that if you're experiencing a lot of discomfort, you might need to look at your shoes and maybe changing your shoes, because it shouldn't really hurt that bad. But one thing I would say from like my own personal experience is I think that it was the most uncomfortable when you first start, and then it kind of progressively gets less uncomfortable. Do you think the same?
Yeah, it's like when you buy a new pair of boots, leather boots, and you put them on and they're really tight and you're like, oh my God, how am I going to get in and out of these boots? Or maybe a pair of heels, right? You just put them on the first few times and you're walking on your tiptoes. You're like, oh my God, I can't do much here. But then eventually you just get used to how to walk on the heels. And with the point shoes, it's the same. And let's be realistic. In today's society, in today's life, they are not that hard anymore. Like you have so many good things on your points nowadays, like they are soft and they are cushy a little bit. And in the bottom of the box of the shoe, there's a little bit of cushion, and you have the toe spacers and you have the covers and the wraps. I didn't have all that. So I can't complain that it was painful, but you guys have so many new options that will allow you not to be on pain. They are uncomfortable and they feel a little bit tight around your toes, but it doesn't really hurt once you get the hang of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are the most uncomfortable when it's a new pair because it takes a while to break them in. And then it is the most uncomfortable when you're first starting and your feet are just getting used to what it feels like, the sensation of the tightness. And then I think, too, it takes a while to kind of figure out your magic recipe of what goes on inside your shoes. You know, it was some trial and error for me of figuring out toe spacers, padding, lamb's wool. You have to kind of play around to find what works for you, because depending on the shape of your toes, like if you have shorter toes that are a little bit thicker, or you have like long, narrow toes, or like it's a whole trial and error process that there's not really like a one size fits all answer. You just have to kind of play around, but it shouldn't be really painful. Like I think that if you are in a ton of pain, there's something wrong.
Exactly what you said, Hannah. It's a recipe. So try to put in, take off, and just see what works for you.
And that kind of segues into our next question, which was about, is Pointe training expensive? And the reason I say it segues is because you do have to spend a little money when you're kind of figuring out, you know, which pair of shoes, because sometimes you might not, the first pair of shoes that you get fitted in might not be working for you. So you might have to get a different pair. You might have to order a couple different things as far as padding, spacers. So there is some money output, especially at the beginning when you're figuring those things out. And then as far as training, I think that, you know, that could depend on where you're living, and does the local studio offer Pointe classes? I know for me, where I live, I don't have in-person adult Pointe classes available. So I pay for private lessons with you, and that's how I'm able to get my training in. So I think that's fairly common. Unfortunately, I think it's pretty common that a lot of adults struggle to find adult beginner Pointe classes. And so you might need to find either an online option that's a group class or an online option for privates, which Miss Elena does offer. Low promo for a great price, honestly, for a great price. So that is potentially how you might have to do it.
Obviously, I would definitely recommend to go to fittings. Don't just buy the Pointe shoes on Amazon. It's just gonna make you regret taking the decision of going on Points. Going with a shoe that doesn't work for you, it is just the worst thing ever. Like, it's just the worst. And you need to go, you need to feel. They have so many options and they're there. So if you're doing this for fun, why would you be suffering when you're trying to have fun? So go get fitted. And I believe that fitting is free. You just pay for the shoes, basically. And the shoe, they are sometimes a little bit expensive, but it's like, I don't know, you don't need to change it that often. It also depends on how often you do your Pointe lessons.
And like you said, especially at the beginning of your Pointe journey, depending on how often you're taking classes, you probably won't be breaking down your shoes as much as like some professional dancers go through a pair every couple days, which like you're not going to be doing most likely. So your shoes will last a little longer. I think, yeah, the expensive part of training just can be if you don't have a local studio that has group classes, you might need to pay for private lessons. And I think that's where it can get pricey depending on what the instructor charges at your studio. Because a lot of times, like I know at the studio in person I go to, you have to pay you have to pay the instructor for their time, but sometimes you also have to pay the studio fee to rent the space. So I know, several other adults that do that. And that gets pricey, which is why I personally opt to do the online classes with you, because I can do them at home. And so I don't have to pay for studio rentals. So that's a way to keep the price down. If you're wanting to start Pointe training and you're concerned about the cost, that's a way to keep the cost down, is to do your training at home with an instructor online.
Yeah. And that's, again, why online lessons they're really a good option out there.
Yeah. So another question we got is how often will I need to take point classes? And I'm assuming that this was framed around in order to progress in a reasonable time frame, how often should you be taking classes? So what would you say, Elena, as a teacher?
As a teacher, I would say minimum 2 classes a week. Doesn't need to be a full 60 minutes, 90 minutes class. Like you with me, Hannah, you're having 30 minutes class. Now, you're having 30 minutes twice a week, but also we need to keep in mind that Hannah's been doing that with me for over a year. So now we went down to 30 minutes because we can actually get things done on the 30 minutes. But if you're taking a point class without ballet class, it would take a little bit longer than that, 45 minutes at least, because you need to warm up, you need to start feeling the shoe and the feet and articulation. So I would say at least 45 minutes twice a week. If you really want to see an improvement, if you just want to dance on your point once a week, that's also perfect though. So it depends your goals.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out, as it depends on your goals. And like you said, just clarifying, my lessons being 30 minutes, really the only reason it works is because we have group class right before. So I'm already warmed to go in. But if I wasn't already warmed up, a 30-minute point class really isn't going to do much for you, because that's, you need to spend at least probably minimum 10 minutes just getting
10
your
to
feet really
15.
warmed up. Yeah.
If you haven't done nothing in the day, definitely.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, I think a couple of times a week. And I'm even finding, like, just speaking from my own experience, I'm doing it minimum twice a week. But I've noticed, and one of my goals, even just for the rest of the year, is bumping that up to at least 3, if not 4 times a week, that I'm just putting my shoes on. And even if I'm just taking a bar class, but I'm doing it in my shoes, because I've noticed that the weeks specifically where I really find that I felt like I improved, it's the weeks I'm spending more time in the shoes. And so I think the longer you can be in your shoes, the better, which actually we got a question. So maybe I'll just kind of jump out of order, because we did get a question. Someone asked, does it make sense to wear point shoes for bar and center classes without actually going up on point, just to get used to them? And I would say, yes, absolutely. What do you think, Elena?
Yeah, I will say definitely go for it. It's not just the matters of getting used to it. You are getting so much strength, so much control, because balancing in a first position on point shoes, like in flat, like you're in a flat first position, just trying to balance that, it's so hard. Try to do a free, try to do a free position with your point shoes, not on relevant, not on point, on flat, on the floor. And it's hard. So you're working on control, balance, strengthening your hips muscles and your glutes muscle, just to keep the turnout and keep the balance. Your abs are gonna die. Like I remember when I used to be a student in Cuba, we sometimes the teacher will ask us to put the point shoes for the 1 hour, like 90 minutes class, or 1 hour 45 minutes, and without going on point, just so we can articulate through the foot with the point and get all this strength on the toes, strength on the arches, the hips, the glutes. And it was just so much better.
I'm laughing because I feel like just standing in your point shoes is like comically difficult. Like there's literally times where I'm just standing on flat on my point shoes and I'm like almost fall over, just because they're so unstable. And I think that's one of those things, like, now I'm remembering, when I first started wearing point shoes, oh my gosh, I remember that, like putting them on and being like, whoa, these are a lot less stable. They're kind of rounded on the sides. And so if you haven't put them on before and stood there in them, you don't kind of realize, they kind of wobble from side to side. In flat shoes, it's really your foot. It's like having a sock on. So you're really getting a lot of contact with the ground. But in a point shoe, it's a lot thicker. It's hard. And then the edges are rounded. So you get this like wobble effect. And so going back to the question, I think doing bar and center classes in your shoes, like
great idea.
It's so great, because you even just getting used to feeling what your shoes feel like when you're standing is part of the journey. Because I think with point, like, we focus so much, and it makes sense, but it's like when you think about getting point shoes, you're thinking of the goal being like being up on point. If you watch a ballet, even a lot of the in-betweens is running around on
Yeah,
demi point or, standing, and you're not on point. So you have to get used to being in your shoes, not on point, just
exactly.
being in them. And so I think doing bar and center is such a great thing. Like, and I think too, for me, one of the things that has really, it's kind of been like the mentality that I've realized is important for the point journey is you have to become intimately acquainted with your shoes.
Yeah.
Like your shoes have to become your friend and something that you are very comfortable in, something that you love, and you're like, okay, we are going to become as one. And so the more time,
Otherwise,
yeah,
the entire class is a total disaster if you don't really connect with your shoes. Because it can go from, oh my God, I'm finally doing it, I can feel it, or go from that to, what am I doing? This hurt, this is tight, this is uncomfortable, or what will this? And the most natural way, I have seen so many videos on YouTube how to break your shoes. Don't break your shoes. They are expensive, they are pretty. You break your shoes in a way that doesn't mold with your foot. And a ballet class is the best way to break your shoe without doing it with your hands, with a chair, with a wall, with nothing. Put your shoes on, go on your ballet bar. You do a bar class with your new shoes, and that would be perfect to break your shoes. Perfect.
it definitely builds strength, like working in a shoe that hasn't been as broken
Yeah.
down. Like if you are not doing a bunch of breaking in on your shoes and you're putting them on and you're doing bar and you're making your feet essentially do the work of making them softer and breaking down, like you're getting a great workout in for your feet and you're getting strength training in. So I think it has like double the benefit, like you said, if you're not prematurely breaking down your shoes because you're closing them in a door and like doing all this crazy stuff that we tend to see on social media because they're expensive and you want them to last. But then you're also, you're getting the benefits of strengthening your feet by doing it manually. So yeah, I think doing as much in your shoes, even if you're not going up on point, is such a good idea. So another question we got is, how do you find a studio that will let you do point? And then kind of, and or how do you bring it up and ask for point at your studio?
I will say that if you went to my class and you asked me, can I put the point shoes just to do the bar class? I will never refuse, but it will be always under your own supervision, because remember that the teacher is not doing a point class, is doing a normal ballet class, and you took the decision of putting your point shoes. So I would say I would never refuse, because I know that is a good option and a good opportunity. However, it might be a little bit risky depending your level and the level of the class that you're taking with your points. But I think always ask. You might give the idea to the studio, because you might not be the first one asking, and maybe the studio is like, oh my God, already 4 of you ask, so I should open a point class. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, I think as far as finding a studio, I mean, the internet is obviously a great resource for searching for a place in your area. I think one thing I've realized within the adult ballet community too is word of mouth is such a great way to find resources. So if you are at a studio that doesn't currently offer point, asking other dancers in your class of like, hey, are you on point? Is there anywhere that you know of to go take classes? Like, I think that's another great way to find a studio. And then, like you said, I think asking, because sometimes studios don't offer classes because they don't think that people will want them. And so I think it's always good to ask. Like, I would just, obviously doing it respectfully of just like, hey, like, I'm just curious. I noticed there's not an adult point class on the schedule, but that's something I would be interested in. Do you happen to know if there's plans for that in the future? Or even sometimes I know studios appreciate if you kind of do the legwork for them of you've already asked around and come to them and say, hey, there's 5 of us that take the adult ballet class that are interested in a point class. Is that something that, since there's 5 of us, would you be interested in starting a class? So I think you really have to advocate for yourself as an adult dancer, because there does tend to be less resources for adults than there are for like kids programs. Children's programs or the teenagers programs, they tend to get more of the resources because the studios are geared towards helping them, maybe go to a professional career. And so a lot of times they'll definitely have point classes, but for the adults, they might not have them because they just don't think there's going to be the interest. But I think it's really important to just bring up the things that you want, because you don't know, like maybe they've had 4 or 5 other people over the last couple months ask about point classes. And then you ask and they're like, maybe there's enough interest to do this. But if they don't know that you want it, they
wouldn't even know there is someone interested. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like letting your studio know you're interested and just asking questions. And then, yeah, like I said at the beginning of the episode, you know, if you can't find anything online is great. I mean, I've literally done my whole point journey with Yelena online. And so, and I'm starting to do turns, like we're progressing like through, like, I don't think there's been anything lacking in my experience because it's been online. So if you can't find something, you can do it that way too.
That's true. But advocating, I love that. It is true that not many people are looking after the adults community. So it would be a good idea to start asking and putting the idea in someone else's mind. Like, yeah, we're here. We really want to give it a try to point classes or dancing a variation. So definitely ask for it.
Yeah, ask for what you want. So the last question we got is it possible to go on Pointe if you are plus sized?
I will say definitely yes. Pointe shoes for every size, for every foot, for everyone. So I will say there is not a reason why not. You just need to make sure, like everyone else, get very strong feet, get a good ballet foundation, and that will be the only thing stopping you from going on Pointe. Nothing else.
That's, I think, the perfect answer, because it really is with Pointe. It's about strength and technique. And that's really the only things that matter. Weight doesn't matter. Age doesn't matter, because, it's a common question. We didn't specifically get asked this, but I know it's a common question of like, am I too old to go on Pointe? It's like the same thing with that question. It doesn't matter really anything else other than technique and strength. So like if you have the strength to sustain Pointe training, you're good to go. So absolutely. I hope this episode was helpful. That was all the questions we got. I think maybe in the future, we'll probably do another one of these. We'll do another Q&A to see if anyone has different questions or if any of our answers gave people an idea for a question they didn't think to ask. So we'll definitely do one of these in the future, but hopefully it was helpful.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great idea. I love how the adult ballet community is growing, and I know you can all do it and find your goals and go for it.
And it's so rewarding. I mean, it's hard. Like, I would never sugarcoat it for an adult, because I just think everything is a little bit harder when you're an adult, as far as, whether we're talking about flexibility or any of the facets of ballet. It is hard. But I think if it's something that you've dreamt of doing whole life, and it's something that you just like could never shake that desire to try it, I just say try it. Because like I don't know, I'm just one of those people where I'm like, I don't want to die and have things that I didn't do, that I always wanted to. And so I'm like, if you have this like burning desire to try Pointe, go for it, because that means you probably will have the passion, the motivation to push through the hard work. And if you want to take class with us, you definitely are more than welcome. Yeah, our classes are super fun. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to After Class with Ballet for All.
Join the community on YouTube and Instagram, or come dance with us, our weekly Zoom classes for adult ballerinas like you.
Links included in the episode description. Special thank you to our sponsors.
See you next time after class. Podcast produced by Mission Bridge Media.